The fact of the matter is, whether you've been in network marketing for years or just a few days, your family and friends have seen your opportunity and your phone is, as we call it, burnt. If you're anything like me, that's a scary thought. So the big question is, how do entrepreneurs like us, who love the network marketing profession, who no longer want to be that guy, and are tired of convincing people during uncomfortable let's get coffee meetings where they say, what's this all about? How do we market in a way that aligns us with our dream clients and expands our network of upfront and transparent professionals, allowing us to get our time back, our families back, and gain a real passive asset? People like us who value impact over income, we deserve to see our visions once and for all. Join me in this podcast where we'll uncover just how to do that. My name is Eric Sablon. Welcome to Burnt Phone Marketing. What's going on, guys? Eric Sablon here with Burnt Phone Marketing. Welcome. Super excited that you're here. Hashtag live if you're coming in live. Hashtag replay if you're coming in on the replay, because we are streaming this live in the group. So as a bonus, always to my Become the Upline students, you guys always get things first. Just so you guys know, this podcast is not even released, but it's recording. What do we call that? We call that repurposing content, guys. Just keep doing it. So I'm super excited. Eric Sablon here, and today I'm going to talk about how important publishing is to business with Coach Luis Diaz, CEO and founder of Podcast Domination, where they specialize in done-for-you podcasting production and growth of agencies for 7, 8, and 9-figure entrepreneurs. Welcome, Luis Diaz. Luis Diaz is a hands-on expert on the subject of how important podcasting is, how important publishing is to business. And he graciously consented to this interview. So I'm loving that he's going to be able to share the skills that every aspiring or veteran podcaster needs to develop to launch and monetize a podcast. So Luis, thank you for the interview. Welcome to the show. Super excited.
Dude, Eric, thanks so much for the intro, man. It's been fun. So I'm looking forward to this one. So I know you're a group of people, like you mentioned, like your people are like really, really on fire. They're super engaged, so I'm excited to be here, man.
I'm fired up. Like I said, I thank you for it's cool how we met. We met in a mastermind, guys. I always say this: don't sleep on your network, because your network is your net worth, guys. Just reach out to the people. Like Ian always said, throw a Hail Mary. You never know who's going to get on your hot podcast. You never know who you can get on the line. So
for real,
I'm just going to start off. Tell us a little about yourself in terms of your background, education, and experience in podcasting.
Cool, dude. So I wasn't formally trained in podcasting or anything. I literally bought an $11 course in 2016. At the time, I was running an online, very small, one-man show online fitness training business. So I was coaching people online virtually, still working offline too, man. And I had a good mentor that was brought in my life at the time, and he proposed the idea of like launching a podcast. And I was like, that sounds great, but I have no idea where to start, like most people, right? So I ended up buying a $11 course, like I said, and started my first podcast in like early 2016. Mind you, in college, I was a hospitality major, played sports, lived in the gym. I was a gym rat up until that point. So really didn't have any understanding of how this thing worked. So 2016, launched my first podcast. That one actually failed miserably within like a month or two of launching, dude. And the funny thing is that the blessing behind that was I learned the foundation of what you needed for a successful podcast through that failure, right? So I realized really quickly that I needed systems, I needed it to be profitable, and I needed it to be super easy for me. Because the more complexity I add to this, the longer it's going to take to get my message out, the longer it's going to take to make money, the longer it's going to take the less I'm going to have fun and enjoy myself. So this 2016, bro, I was launched this podcast. It failed. Decided after a couple months to kind of like lick my wounds and kind of move on and finally start another one and like get over myself. So I started another podcast called Ask the Ab Guy. Mind you, I was still in the fitness training space, still trying to get work with more people online and for high ticket coaching. And that one actually took off. And I went from 0 to 19,000 downloads a month and started to monetize it through affiliate sales and through basically moving listeners into a sales call and then closing them as clients. So that was a fun ride, dude. And I learned from that. I learned a ton of stuff through that podcast that people started to ask me questions of like, how'd you launch a podcast? Like, how do you run one? How do you monetize it? And so in 2017, the next year, I started helping people just for free on the side, with their podcasts. And then that kind of turned into more of an agency, started picking up more clients, more traction. And dude, yeah, the last couple of years, I've just been entrenched in the podcasting space, and just I love it. So for me, it's fun to see people and help people kind of do what I did and continue to do, man. So yeah, definitely a lot of failures along the way. Like, don't get me wrong, like it was every single day there's failures and mistakes made, but yeah, dude, that's the long and short of my story.
Dude, Louis, that's awesome. I mean, obviously, we're talking to the right person. We're talking to an expert. We're talking to somebody that has done podcasting, 0 to 19,000 downloads per week. That's huge, guys. Like, that is enormous. That's a great start. And then what you said was you started off with an $11 course, just
Yeah,
going
from
like,
Udemy. Yeah.
yeah, you paid for something and then you just took action. So we always say this, guys, take imperfect action and stuff happens. B plus work changes lives. You hear me say that all the time. Just go do it. And
Mm-hmm.
then I love what you said about the foundations, that the failure created your foundations.
Yeah.
And basically you built off what you failed. Like it's not always great to hit the home run right off the bat. It's always great to maybe strike out a couple times or one time just to kind of lick the wounds and get the arrows. So
Yeah.
everyone kind of knows what's going on. So you know what to expect.
Yeah. 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 Exactly.
So let's talk about skills. I mean, let's be honest, skills are inexpensive. They're kind of cheap, but what I want to do is I want to just kind of give, what's the first skill every aspiring podcaster or veteran podcaster needs to come to launch and monetize their podcast?
I think it's being really good at listening. And two things: you need to listen to your audience of like, what are their actual pain points, not the ones that you think are their pain points. So what are the ones they're actually telling you? And then the other one is your guests. Like, if guests can also be clients, referral partners, prospects. Like your guests, I've made a decent amount of sales through my guests, whether they become clients afterwards or they, are people who refer me to other people, or they just open doors. So I look to listen to my guests. And even if you're getting on podcasts, a secret I tell people is like, go and listen to some shows and see what they need. Like if I listened to this podcast before, Eric, and I knew you were like, maybe you're like, a San Diego Padres fan. Maybe I send you a San Diego Padres shirt so I can connect with you and build a relationship with you, right? So listening, I'm always listening. I'm listening for opportunities. So I think it's the biggest skill. Like, you have to be a good listener and to a couple different markets: your audience, your guests, and then obviously if you want to get on podcasts, other podcasters. Because with that kind of gives you the fuel to build or solve problems for people.
Nice. That's great. So I'm just going to reiterate that, guys. You got listen to your audience, and we always talk about defining your avatar. So listening to your audience, like a post that actually asks a question to your audience,
Mm-hmm.
that's exactly what we're talking about here. And then like their pain points, like people that know their problems are willing to spend money to fix their problems. So just know that you got to listen for pain points, and that's great in your messaging. And then I love what you said, like see what they need. And when you're listening to podcasts, like grab something that they know, like, and trust and send them a gift. That's like a ninja move.
Yeah.
If you're
Oh,
taking
dude.
notes right now,
Works.
that is a ninja move. Just right now, that is a ninja move. Awesome. So we kind of went over skills. What do you think the big challenges in publishing is right now for most businesses? Like, what's the big challenge that people are trying to overcome before they start their podcast?
That's a really good question, Eric. So the biggest challenge is that right now there's about 1.9 million podcasts in the world. That's a lot of noise. I think there's over 50 million episodes published. So if you think about that, that's a lot of noise you have to cut through. So the biggest challenge right now is like cutting through the noise and standing and being able to reach your listener, because like we all get hit with messages. It's the reason why, like I was telling you before we got on, that I don't like going on social media anymore, because there's just so much noise. You can get pulled down so many different rabbit holes, right? So the biggest thing is being able to cut through the noise and stand out. And that may not sound very novel or new, but it's still one of the biggest problems out there if you're a publisher, veteran or not a veteran podcaster.
That's huge. That's huge. So that is like social media. That is marketing 101. If you can find a way to cut through the noise, you can. I didn't realize it's 1.9 million podcasts and 50 million.
Growing.
That's noisy. That is definitely noisy. Which is gonna link me right into the next question that I kind of came up with is cutting through the noise. Where do you see the biggest opportunity for podcasters that people may be missing?
I think the opportunity, a lot of people want to have a big show, and like, granted, like I wrote a book called How to Get Your First 100,000 Downloads in 100 Days. So I'm like the guy people go to when they want to learn how to grow their podcast. But the opportunity is not talking to millions and thousands of listeners. It's actually talking to an audience of one. A podcast can be a really, really, really sleek sales enrollment tool. I had a woman, one of our clients recently, she launched her show and she doesn't have a huge audience. She's an expert in what she does, but she doesn't have a huge audience at all. Maybe 100, 200 listeners a month or something. And she's landed a 5, maybe 6-figure deal within 6 weeks of launching her podcast. And that is because she's not trying to talk to everybody. The opportunity is talking to that one person that you can serve really, really well. Right? So she talks to like high risk business, like owners, people who run businesses in high risk industries, gambling, dating, like industries that get a lot of chargebacks, right? A lot of have a lot of problems with banks and stuff. So she's talking to that one person she can help, not to all the internet marketers in the world, or not to all the people selling stuff online, or coaches. She's talking to that one person. So the opportunity is talking to one, not to many. And you do that, like we were just saying, through listening and even like reviewing your sales calls. Like my best content, Eric, is when I review my sales calls and I listen to the problems my prospects are telling me. Like, you will come up with amazing content if you just listen back to those sales calls and use that in your content.
Wow. Like, I'm like retrospect, I'm just listening to what you're saying. Like, you're telling me to listen. I'm listening and I'm like, I'm going to review my sales calls and I'm going to review Gavian's sales calls, just kind of to find the pain points. But the nugget that I just grabbed from you is everyone wants to be Joe Rogan. Everyone wants to be these big giant people and have this huge monetization, this huge audience.
Yeah.
And, Russell Brunson says, do your Dream 100, or you only need 1,000 raving fans.
Yeah.
But the nugget that you just gave me is like, you're looking for the audience of one.
Yeah.
Because you can serve that one person can lead you to more and more people, which,
right.
Everybody wants bazillion downloads, but if you're helping one person, just like, what's funny? My next question was, do you have a particular story or case study of what it is? And you went right into it. So that's a huge nugget. Like, speak to one person, listen well. Man, this is a great show. And if you guys are listening and paying attention, like, this is the kind of thing that will get you propelled, just the skills to launch your first podcast, or to revamp the one that you're already running and kind of go and take the next step. So that's awesome. I'm going to ask you this one because we're talking about revamping or doing,
Sweet.
Any tips on launching a podcast?
Yeah, it almost kind of goes back to what we've been talking about, is like my advice if you're launching a podcast now. So part of what we do and how we help people is we help them really dial in the marketing side of their podcast. So one of the things I have a lot of clients do when we first get started is we'll either survey their list, or we'll listen to their sales calls, or take a look at like those intricate things. So my advice, if you can't do this, or if you don't have sales calls, I want you to get on the phone with like one, or as many as you can, but like, let's say like shoot for like 1 to 5 people who are your perfect avatar. and ask them, hey, if I'm launching a podcast, but I just want to know from you, honestly, like what kind of podcasts do you listen to? What would you want to hear? What pain points or problems are you having with XYZ? You know what I mean? Like just interview that person, record that call, and then you can literally build your podcast off of that person or that small group of people. You can even do this with, like, when I was launching our program last year, I interviewed a few people who hadn't launched a podcast and got feedback on like what is it they want in a program. And then I turned around and made it. So like that's, if you don't know where to begin and you really want to serve like this specific audience, go and interview them. And I guarantee you'll find some things that you didn't know were there that you could use in your marketing.
Wow. So for all of our clients, that we have that avatar interview script inside our course. So
Perfect.
This is exactly what he's talking about. It's like he's talking about, asking your audience before you find their problems, find their solutions, find out what they want before you go out and create something that you're thinking everybody else wants. I was on an interview yesterday and he's like, you want to solve the customer's problem where they are and when they're receiving it. So that way, what to market to them. So like, don't go out and create the podcast about everything that you love. Make sure there's, a couple of people that love what you love so you can talk to them. And just by going to that strategy, that's huge. That's a big nugget.
Dude. If I can, I'll add one more thing too, because I was doing a podcast on my show about this early this morning, and that's about alignment. So a lot of people will say, I want to serve people, I want to help people, I want to launch a podcast because I know I've got some amazing content to share with people. But the real truth of it is they want to launch a podcast to make money, or they want to launch a podcast to fill their funnel or fill their client list. And I get that. I'm the same way. The thing I find messes people up is that they build a podcast that is socially acceptable, helping people, serving people, interviewing others, but then they're unhappy and unfulfilled with it because it's not delivering what they truly want, which is leads and sales and clients and money. And it's like, it's okay to want to monetize your podcast. So, but be honest about that and like create the show around that goal. So if you have a podcast that like is, doesn't talk about your offers, doesn't talk about your products, doesn't talk about your services, there's no way you can expect to monetize that podcast. Because nobody knows that you have any of that stuff, So the offers and what you do and how you help has to be weaved and sewed into that product or that podcast. So that's a huge thing too, misalignment between like the podcast you're building and what you really want it to do. Make sure those things are kind of in alignment there, because that will help a lot down the road.
Right. So like what I would say is make it in alignment. So make it coexist together with your offers and not just at the end, like, hey, here's my offer. Like literally like coexist it with interview the people that you think are going to want to listen to and that can provide value for your audience.
Yeah.
Still want to monetize. Like that's a huge.
Yeah. Or I'll see people like not put any calls to actions or not mention what they do in the podcast at all. And it's really easy to assume that your audience knows about you and they know what you're talking about, or they know that you sell XYZ, but trust me, they are probably not even problem aware. Or if they are problem aware, maybe they don't know that you're the solution, or they don't know what solutions you have. So you have to make that abundantly clear.
I'm going to ask you a pro tip on that one, because I know you kind of weaved it in, and I know you kind of talked about it on your podcast. One skill, one nugget, one phrase, one something that will, because there's so many people out there that are like, I'm so worried about making the offer. I'm so worried about, feeling salesy. What's like your, like one tip that you give someone that's like trying to weave it into their offer, but they don't try to weave it into an interview, but they don't want to feel like I'm selling. So do you have a tip on that?
Yeah, I do. So I think one that makes it really easy is if you just talk about the results, talk about the story of your client. And if you don't have a client, talk about your story. And if you've got results for yourself, then you got to talk about that. You know what I mean? So you don't have to sell outright like, hey, buy my product, or hey, like for $9.97 you can get, like you can just talk about, hey, Jerry, we've been working with Jerry. He's an awesome dude. And, he was able to achieve $37,000 in sales last month with this one thing that we taught him, so weaving in and teaching it with stories, I think it's the easiest way to sell anything just by storytelling. And I'm not the storytelling expert by any means. I probably have ruined stories um, that are pretty easy, but like just retelling the story, man. It's like you're talking to a friend. That's what I think is the easiest way to do it.
And guys, he gave you a pro tip just now to weave in a story. Did you notice that he told us a story about a successful client earlier?
Yeah.
So he literally is doing he's like Fabian says, he's eating his own dog food. Like that is the story. Just get really, really good at a few stories about your product, about your service, about what you do, and weave them in, and they won't feel like a sales presentation. They'll feel like
Yeah.
you're edifying somebody else and you're telling a story. So if you're having problems like literally making your pitch or feel like it's too pitchy, tell a story.
Yeah.
Stories will definitely help you get through that.
Mm-hmm.
So I got two more questions. You started in 2016.
Yeah.
Do you think it's easier or harder for a new aspiring podcaster starting out today than it was when you started out?
I think it's harder today because everybody and their cousin is a podcast expert. Case in point, I had a client who she's in one of our programs, and she admitted to me yesterday. She's like, "Sorry, I've been on Clubhouse too much and listening to all these other podcast gurus." And I'm like, "That's why you're confused and you're not making any progress right now. Let me just tell you that. You paid me a bunch of money to help you, and then you go on Clubhouse and listen to a bunch of people who don't know anything, nor have you invested any skin in the game with these people. So they don't have any obligation to actually tell you what's real and what's not."
That's big.
So and that's the truth. It's harder today, man, because everybody thinks, and there's a lot of great people out there. I'm not saying I'm the only one. Like, there's great people out there. However, a confused buyer doesn't buy, or confused prospect doesn't buy. If you're confused about podcasting, then you've got to find someone to follow and follow that one person. This is why we're in a mastermind, because there's a lot of people who could teach us and help us. But like, if we sat there and listened and watched for the emails to fall into our inbox and read all of them from different gurus, we wouldn't do anything. We'd be stuck. So it's harder today for sure.
I agree that because there's so much, well, what you talked about earlier, it's so noisy. And what I like what you said was you had a client that you serve and you're trying to get them results because they paid you.
Mm-hmm.
And now they're going out all over the place and just trying to get free information from places. Mm-hmm. I always say, like, start the course and finish the course. And then search out another people, or like mesh into other things. But actually, when you start it, if it's an 8-week course, don't go searching for more problems or more solutions when you're in week 6, when you still have 3 more weeks to complete the course. Like, just be done with it. Like, complete the course and be done, and then go look at other places.
Yeah.
But stay where you're at, guys. Stay where you're at and finish what you started before you go out and like absorb everybody else's free value, because they have no skin in the game, or you don't have skin in the game to get results from that coach coach that you're working with directly.
Yeah. That's a cause of inaction right there, dude. Too much information, and there's plenty of it today.
So thank you, Luis. This is a great interview. I'm sure that all aspiring podcasts and veterans and our artists got a much clearer understanding on what they need to do, some skills, some listening tips that they need. Thank you. But what I really want to do is, can you tell us a little bit more about Podcast Domination and how Podcast Domination can specifically help aspiring or veteran podcasters?
Yeah, for sure. Happy to. I'll split it up into 2 ways, how we help people. So the easiest, how I started out, was helping people doing everything for them. So done for you agency. We still run that. We've got about 16, 17, 18 clients in there right now. So we have a side of the business that does everything for them. So if you need to launch a podcast, you can, I'd say probably just ask Eric for a personal intro to me. And that way I can make sure I know you came from Eric, and I can take care of you properly. We kind of accelerate you through the process. The other side of that is coaching, where we have basically a program that I just mentioned that helps people launch a podcast without the done for you. So it's all the strategy and marketing and setup, templates, all that good stuff that you'd need to launch a profitable podcast in 8 weeks. So coaching or done for you, kind of the two ways we can help people. For higher level people, high level like podcasters who are already existing, we do have occasional workshops and trainings for them. For if you're looking for like ways to like grow and accelerate or monetize an existing podcast, man. So, dude, this has been fun. So I really appreciate your time, Eric. Thanks for having me on here. And great questions too, dude, by the way. So
thank you. This is a blast. I'm super excited. Yeah. And I look forward to seeing you on an interview in the next couple of weeks. That's going to be super exciting. So guys,
yeah.
Thank you, Luis, for jumping on. I appreciate it. Like always, guys, stay till the end. Listen to the outro, the whole outro, because I always give away some sort of free offer or something for you. Check the show notes because I'm going to drop a little bit of link information to Luis, so that way you can kind of see exactly what he has. He has a phenomenal press page that talks about the stories of his clients that are getting results. So I'll drop that in the show notes also. And I will catch you guys on the next Burnt Phone Marketing interview. Talk to you later.
Peace.
Are you tired of those lame Facebook groups that provide no value? Well, our Facebook group is awesome. Go to unlockthefbgroup.com and get access to our Facebook group, where you will be able to find interviews of top network marketers and Q&As where you can jump in and talk to them live. We also have massive training. We provide a bunch of free tools. So jump into that group. Again, that's unlockthefbgroup.com. We'll ask you a few questions in mini chat because that's what we do. And make sure that you're not a spammer and get you into the group right away. So again, go to unlockthefbgroup.com and don't be a spammer.